Hi, and welcome to our first interview for Waiting for Players. Today we have Maxime Vezina. So hard to say. We're just going to call him Maxim for this, for the purposes of this. But he's the creator of and developer of Red Trigger, which is a super fun puzzle, I don't know how you call it.
Like first person puzzle shooter game. Yeah.
First person puzzle shooter game. But it's super fun. So Maxim, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. We actually talked before in the chat.
Yeah, we did.
Another podcast.
No, we're glad you showed up. That was awesome to have you laugh at these guys struggling with the levels.
How enjoyable was that? I mean, I think Adam was failing pretty hard, actually.
Oh, I saw pretty much much worse playthroughs.
Oh, okay.
But no, it was really fun to see because actually each time I get back from work, I always check for let's plays of the game because I'm always interested to see the reactions of people playing my game. So and it will be useful for the next games.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty obvious. I mean, like, I think Adam tweeted about the gameplay before we started the podcast, and you retweeted it almost instantaneously. Like, right after he did it, he's like, oh, he already retweeted it. We're just like,
yeah.
So that's really cool that you're super involved, which is one of those things I love about indie games, because it seems like most developers in indie games are more involved.
You have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to interact with the community. So yeah, each time I can, I just answer to people because I'm a gamer myself, so I would like to have an answer from a developer if I write, for example, a review or something. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, well, I'm a level designer, and I currently work at Ubisoft, and I finished my studies in 3D animation and design pretty much in May. So yeah, and like I said, I'm the creator of the game Red Trigger, and it's now on Steam.
It is, and it's free. It's
Yep,
free,
it's
so there's
free.
no reason not to play that game.
Exactly.
So what got you into game design and development in the first place?
I would say it was pretty much a laid out path for me since the very beginning because since my childhood I was really passionate about video games, and I just told myself, well, I want to make video games because even earlier when I was younger I played a lot with the RTS editors to make like scenarios and missions. So yeah, and then I got pretty lucky because new programs came out around when I was about to be in college. So I saw a program called 3D animation. So I just told myself, okay, let's do it and go all the way.
Very cool.
So there you go.
What? Just out of curiosity, what RTS were you playing with Map Editor on? What RTS?
Mostly Age of Empires 3
Interesting.
and Age of Mythology.
Oh wow, I love that game.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
love
a
that
classic.
game.
I've only played Age of Empires, if I'm being honest, so Age of Mythology, I don't know.
It's really similar,
Pretty similar.
but you have the ability to choose gods, and they give you powers and special units that you can produce.
Ran. That does sound awesome.
It is.
So what's your favorite game of all time?
My favorite game, it's clearly The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's an amazing game too.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Mega Man fan myself. Mega Man X specifically is like the epitome of my childhood gaming.
Another classic.
Yeah, amazing game design in that.
I played the crap out of that game. And then recently Peter bought it on his Wii U.
Yeah.
And I got to beat it again.
Pretty quickly too. He remembered a lot of it.
Yeah, I beat that game like literally like 20 times as a child. So it took me a split second to remember the boss order, you know. But
Yeah.
No, games, it's funny. I think everybody has a different game that they played when they were a kid that probably influenced them the most, you know.
What about
Yeah.
that game specifically did you like as far as that Zelda game?
I think it's because it's so unique and special compared to the other Zelda games, which I love them all. But I don't know, for this one, I really like also the mechanic of time.
Yeah.
Because it's a concept that really interests me in general. And yeah, the game design and level design in this game was amazing, and I just loved the last dungeon, the Stone Tower Temple. So actually, that was an inspiration for the Red Trigger, where the world turns upside down.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I really appreciated that. And actually, with Majora's Mask specifically, the whole time aspect is the reason some people hate that game, and it's the reason some people love that game. So it's just like this weird, contentious thing with
And
Majora's Mask.
it's also so much a colorful game, but so dark in its concepts. So yeah.
Yeah, I loved. I won't lie, my favorite's Ocarina of Time if we're talking about the Zelda games, but
that's another classic. But yeah, I don't know for which reason, but yeah, Majora's Mask really stuck with me.
So were there any other games that influenced the development of Red Trigger?
Yeah, well, of course, the most obvious one is Portal.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But again, I still wanted the game to be unique and to differentiate from Portal. So I hope I at least achieved that. But another inspiration that people don't really think about, but about the blocks that come out, it was actually from Batman Arkham Knight, where with the Batmobile you can hit, I think it was the B button, so you can switch with different sets of blocks that would come out and retract. So that's where I got the idea of, hey, that would be interesting to use these blocks by shooting them, and you have a limited amount and you use them for platforms and all bunch of things.
Yeah, the limited amount took me by surprise in the beginning. I didn't even realize. Also, on that note, that in the beginning of the game, when you get the gun and you grab that little handle and then all the blocks form around it to make your rifle, I absolutely love that.
The animation was really well done.
Yeah, it looks very cool. Which is one of the greatest parts to me because it gets you excited right at the start of the game.
That's exactly the feel I wanted to
Yeah, and about the most important part of the game, too.
Yeah.
I mean, the gun is everything.
And I didn't... so you have nice tutorial prompts in the game, and me being a normal gamer, I totally ignored all of them. And then when they were playing in the studio, they were like, oh, we just hit this button and it automatically gives us all our ammo back. And I'm like, what? When I was playing it, I was running around and I was shooting everything. So, like, granted, I used a mouse and keyboard at home, so it was much easier for me to hit what I was aiming at than these guys with the controller. It was very sensitive on the controller that we didn't really adjust anything before the show, so they were struggling a little bit. But when they're like, oh, you just hit this button and then you don't have to shoot at your feet and then try to look up where you're going. Like, I was doing that the whole time I played them.
Probably made it a little bit harder.
It did.
For sure.
It was a little tricky, but like I said, I was just like, man, I wish I would have read those prompts that were popping up in my face, and I just totally ignored them.
Yeah, but I saw that so often that, especially during school, where I was studying at university in design, and it's crazy because you just tell yourself, well, I just put the prompt like right in the middle of the screen and nobody sees it. When you do playlist. So yeah.
In my experience, you have the same problem. We had a game that I was working on. We made a whole bunch of tutorializing, and people will just go through it like next, don't even read it. But I think that that's a testament to your game design, because you put all of the triggers for those prompts in the right places because of the way that you designed the level. You knew that the player would end up there. Just like right in the very beginning when you're first introducing the left trigger for recalling all of your ammunition, that was the perfect place to show that.
And I give only 2 energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like I said on the chat last time, I think there's way too much hand-holding in games these days. Like always prompt showing up in your face, like, hey, you could do that, and you're just like, okay, I've liked to figure that out myself. So that's why I designed the game that it's the level design that teach you the mechanics. Because in the game, the only tutorials you have is the controls, because you can't guess them. But apart from that, you don't. I don't have to tell the player like, oh, you can propel yourself, or you can hold the door open, or all these things. So yeah, it's the level design is designed to teach the player, which I found much more interesting.
Yeah, force them to learn.
Well, it obviously worked because I ignored every prompt and I still figured it out. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's coming from someone that's played Mega Man X, which is like one of the best games for that, because there is no tutorial in Mega Man X. They make you figure it out.
Yep.
And then, well, in Mega Man X, I guess every time you get one of those little power-up booths, it shows you real quick what it can do, and then after that. But that's like the extent of any teaching in that entire game. No, but the game you created, Red Trigger, is designed super well. Like I said, I had no problem figuring it out. And when I watched the video on Steam before I downloaded it, the block that shoots out and hits you and launches you across the room for the first time, that was in the video. So as soon as I got there, I was just like, walked up, stood on the platform, turned around, shot it, knocked me across the map, and I was like, ha. little happy moment playing there. So are you playing any games currently?
Currently, well, the last game I played is Inside.
Okay.
So it's from the curators of Limbo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very moody game. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Cool. Probably pretty busy lately.
Yeah, well, like I said, I go to work and then I come back and then try to answer everybody on the forums. So that's pretty much the routine right now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, though. I would say keep that up because that's what's going to keep people coming back.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm telling myself.
But so on the same note, kind of outside of video games, are there any hobbies you have that outside of like computers and video games and such?
Well, I didn't touch this for a while, but I'm really interested in music also.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I would like to come back to it because like it was in high school that I played, for example, drums, and I really would like to come back to that. And I also like writing. I actually wrote a book. So yeah.
Actually, speaking of music, who did the music for Red Trigger? Was that you?
No, it wasn't me. It was Gabriel Essiambre, and he was my sound designer. And me on my side, I wrote down a whole list of each sound I needed and each music I needed with references to other musics that already existed. So yeah,
Excellent.
We worked together on that.
Very cool. Yeah, the music in that game is very nice.
It is, and I think it's really important to set the mood, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sound is incredibly important in games. I mean, not just for the timing of your attacks or what have you for whatever game that you're playing, but also sets the mood outside of what you see.
Exactly. Like, for example, the last part of Red Trigger, it wouldn't be as intense without the music.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that.
So, how long have you been working for Ubisoft?
Now it's been almost 2 months.
So you're pretty new to the whole scene then.
Yeah, because like I said, I finished university like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And so I presented the game because there was a gala at the end of the semester where we presented our games. And there was, I think, 11 games in total. And I presented the Red Trigger in front of 800 people.
Oh, wow.
And there was a lot. And 300 of them were people from the industry, and they had to vote for their favorite games, and Red Trigger won the prize of choice of the industry.
Excellent.
So that put me on the map, let's say.
That's very cool. That had to have been exciting.
Yeah, it really was.
Was there contention there? Were there other good games?
Yeah, there were. Yeah. But the thing is, like I find surprising, is that all the other teams, it was teams of 7 or 8 people, and I was the only one that made a game alone. So yeah.
Wow.
But still, they voted for my game, so that was really surprising for me.
Yeah, anytime something you do that takes a lot of hard work and then you get the payoff at the end, it's a pretty special moment.
Indeed, for sure.
Can you attribute that victory there at the end at your university to getting a job at Ubisoft?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, there was my lead level designer that came and played my game, and he was like, "Okay, just send me an email this week." So
nice.
Yeah, and he said if he could, he would have just played my game all the night. So yeah, that was pretty amazing.
That's awesome. I don't have any game design skills. I did do some level creation in Halo once, though, so you know.
Well, that's a start.
That is a start.
What's personally for you? What's your favorite part of the game development process?
Yeah, I would say it's designing the levels and putting them together, because the first 2 weeks I did all the level design on top view, like in Photoshop. I just drew them. And then the 2 other weeks I prototyped all the mechanics, and then the 2 other I built the game in its whole. So yeah, by week sixth, I had the whole game like really really rough, but it was still possible to complete it.
Oh,
Wow, in 6 weeks?
Yeah.
That's very impressive. That is not a tremendous amount of time there.
Yeah, well, I had a mentor for making this game for this project, and he said because actually I said I would like in 2 weeks to make the whole game when I was at week 4, and he said yeah, well, you'll probably just have a third of the game because everyone is too optimistic. And then I worked like crazy, and I came back 2 weeks later and said, well, I have the whole game now. And he was like, wait, what?
You're like, I'll show you.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the most enjoyable part of creating Red Trigger for you? That
I would say it's the part when you see everything coming together, because you have the idea in mind like months before, but again, you can have an idea, but it's not always fun when you actually make it. So yeah, it was fun to see, for example, the propulsion mechanic working, and I was like, okay, I think I got something there. So yeah.
That big room with the laser grid that comes up, and you have to use that to launch across and then launch yourself up and then out and then back. You know,
that was actually the first level I designed.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
So Adam died a whole bunch there. So did I, but I got to the checkpoint pretty quickly. But still, I had a hard time getting myself across the thing, like getting stuff to work the way I was thinking about it. And that was probably my favorite level, though, honestly, only because it gave me the most guff, like trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
when I was
it's
playing.
really quick thinking, that level.
Yeah. You have those lasers as a motivator for your
Yep.
players.
And I can't.
That's what I put the checkpoint in midway, because there's kind of a puzzle where you have to drop in front of the block. So I thought it was way too harsh to start back at the beginning if you mess up at that part.
I appreciate that, because that probably. I mean, even at that checkpoint, because I was trying to move so fast so I could stay ahead of the lasers so I could continue. When the checkpoint would load me, I would get moving so fast sometimes, I would do the sprint, I would run right off the edge of the platform I was on, and then I would die again, and I would be like, dang it. You know, like,
Too excitable.
yeah, exactly, trying to move too fast instead of just doing it. I ran off it quite a few times. I was glad we weren't video recording that. That could have been iffy. So, what made you want to specialize in level design? Has that always just been what attracts you most to video games?
I think so, because like even when I was younger, I looked at how the levels were done, and I always found that so interesting. And there's such a philosophy behind it. There's like so much thing you can learn with that, like a difficulty curve and everything. So it's a really interesting subject. And for example, at my school, most people are artists, but me, like you probably know, I'm more of a designer than an artist. So yeah.
Yeah, and because you were talking about Majora's Mask, Zelda, the level design in those games are some of the best, from that time for sure. Like,
Yep.
So I can totally see how that would be a driving factor for that, because I can't tell you how many times Zelda has frustrated me to no end. And then you complete something and you're like, it was that simple the entire time.
Yep. Usually it's that, and that's the thing with Red Trigger, for example. I wanted to give a good challenge, but with being fair. So there's nothing too harsh, I think, in the game.
Yeah, no, it was. I think it's got a really good balance throughout.
Yeah.
That
You definitely could have been more mean, if anything.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, I designed the game so that the player, when he figure out the puzzle, he's feeling clever and he's like, oh, I got it. So yeah, that's the feeling I was looking for.
The one you shoot through the glass and then you put the 3 pillars through the doors to hold them open.
Yep.
That took me a hot minute to figure out. Adam figured it out faster than I did.
Yep.
I was standing on that button and then those things were coming up through the glass and I was just like, that doesn't do anything for me. And I wasn't paying attention to what was below or realizing the fact that I could shoot things through there. But no, that was a fun part. That was tricky.
I think my favorite... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, the only thing I wanted to say is that that's the thing with Red Trigger. You have to really be aware of all your surroundings. So the answer is often there.
Yeah, actually, that was the leads right into what I was going to say. That my favorite part of your game is when you're in that room with all the floating cubes, 3 of which are blue, and then viewed from the right perspective, that is the answer to the puzzle of the room, which is I thought was quite awesome as far as figuring out what you're going to do. Because just watching Adam try to solve that puzzle and just kind of shooting random blocks, and then eventually realizing that if he looked from this certain angle, it was this aha moment, which I think that you were trying to give people.
Yep.
And it totally worked. You gave him a sense of accomplishment the moment that he saw that, and it definitely wasn't too easy to realize that was there. You hit it well enough, but not too well.
Yeah, that was the goal, and that's actually my favorite puzzle. Along with the one in the firewall where they're spinning platforms and you have to block them to resynchronize them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
So you were saying earlier before that you just recently patched the game. So what did you patch?
Actually, for the last patch, it was there were problems with the music, where the menu music would continue while you play, and there was also in level 6. Actually, when you stream the game, there was a problem where the collision is not great, and you have to like push yourself over lasers, so to get to a little gap. And this one wasn't great because I don't know why, but the collisions are not great in Unreal for fast-moving objects. So I changed a bit the layout so that it's more solid and less glitchy. So yeah.
Have you used Unity before, just out of curiosity?
I used it once in college.
Okay, yeah, they have the same problem in Unity, and my familiarity with it is called the bolt through paper effect. And usually, what we did in our games to try and curb that was we would do a raycast backwards to determine if we had already passed through an object before we rendered the frame, and that way you can essentially stop the object from passing through. Because if you have a really high cycle rate on a computer, then before the next check, the object would have moved past it. And
Yep.
that's how we ended up doing that. But it sounds like you didn't really write a lot of code for this game.
Well, I didn't actually write any line of code.
That's what I
so
figured.
it was all made with a system called Blueprint in Unreal. So it's like how I would describe it. It's like pre-made bunch of codes that are called nodes that you connect together to make a logic. So
they made a
that's pretty
plugin
much it.
for Unity that was really similar to that. I've never used it before, but I've seen it used for other indie games. So I mean, it's definitely a viable way of making a game, and Game Maker is kind of similar to that.
Yep.
Do you actually know any programming languages?
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm really, really good at it, but I know C++ and Java.
Okay, great.
And also HTML. So yeah.
Awesome.
I knew HTML once upon a time in high school.
Yeah.
That was my only foray into any kind of programming whatsoever.
I'm just so deep in
it's
it now.
all similar in the end.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the same logic. It's just mostly the names that are different.
And the syntax sometimes.
Yep.
Like for me, the biggest jump. I know quite a few languages now, but for me, the biggest jump is like going from something like C#, which is my main language, and going to Perl or Python that have really weird syntax, and it weirds me out. But other than that, you can definitely everything you learn in one can put to the other.
Exactly.
So how does it feel for your very first game you created to be so well received on Steam and everywhere?
It's pretty amazing because, like I said, it was really a dream of mine since a long time ago, and I was always telling myself, well, I want to make a living out of it. So it's pretty amazing to see that it works because I've been planning this for a long time, but I want to make my own little indie studio in a couple of years. So it's kind of reassuring to see that it's possible to do it. So I think, well, I hope it will work out.
If Red Trigger's any indicator, I think you're gonna do just fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because you're, like I said, we looked at Steam Spy. User scores at 90%, which is incredible because there's plenty of people out there who just love to not love games. Like if you read Steam comments on a lot of games, there's a lot of people that I think are overly picky, when they're playing. And I don't think they always understand exactly everything about it when they bash games, because you'll read it and you'll see 0.2 hours on record,
Exactly.
And you're just like, wow, you must have put a lot of time into that before drawing that conclusion,
Quick to judge.
Well, I had the same thing with Red Trigger also. I think at least 6 or 7% of the negative comments are exactly that just haters, or they don't comment for the game, they just comment, for example, for the options.
Right.
And then I'm like, right, okay, I understand, but still, you can still enjoy the game, I think.
It's also free.
Exactly.
So,
people are like, the game's too short, he needs to add more levels, and it's like, it's a free game, and it's insanely fun, and you can speed run it, which there's a whole community dedicated to that aspect of gameplay, and your game lends itself really nicely to that.
Most gamers have no idea how much work goes into making it.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely no idea. We some of the apps that I've made, app games, we put out a free game called Pictopia, which is just a Disney trivia game, and you always get the same kind of comments. The game's too short, there's not enough content, and then it always boils down onto the other side for us, but the game is free. You obviously enjoyed it enough to play it, so.
Exactly.
But that's the thing with the industry today, I think, is that there's so much games coming out that gamers they're kind of spoiled and they don't appreciate as much the content behind and all the work behind. So yeah, when you work on games, I think you appreciate much more.
Definitely.
Yeah, and just because there is a ton, and there's people that release games that aren't done all the way and stuff, but there's just so much content. I mean, you go into the free tab on Steam, and there's a ton of games you can choose, and I think all of those developers out there, deserve some respect because they're trying. I can't make a game. I know nothing about it. I love playing games, and I try not to be too critical of people who are doing it, because if I tried to make one, I couldn't. So.
Yeah, well, playing and making a game is very, very different.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, like I said, of course I want to make a living out of it, but I'm really not doing this for the money, because my goal is really to bring fun to people and hopefully even make them forget their problems for a moment.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what video games are for in the end. So yeah, I think that's the most important part of it.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, it's just like reading books or anything. It's just another form of immersion.
Yeah, escape.
Exactly.
Yep,
where you
exactly.
can just have fun and not be stressed, because I'm sorry, for most people, life is fairly stressful.
It is.
Like you right now, trying to keep up with everybody and holding down a full-time job. I'm sure it's super fun, but there's gotta be stressful points where there's a lot going on.
For sure, but like I said, in the end, I think it's all worth it. So
Yeah.
it's just a little sacrifice, but yeah, I think it makes it all worth it in the end when you see that people appreciate what you make. So yeah.
Well, I think that you're now in a position at Ubisoft to find people that in the future, if you were going to start your game studio, that you'd find the right people, the knowledgeable ones that fill the gaps in your knowledge. And
for sure, that was the goal. Actually, I just want to make experience for now, because I think it would. I probably would have managed to do it still, but I think it's much more safe to actually take the time to gain more experience.
Oh yeah.
So there you go.
That's definitely the wise way to do it.
It's a really hard industry to break into. Especially with AAA studios specifically, unless you know someone or you've wowed them like yourself, it's really hard to break into. They have a really high benchmark for what they expect you to know moving in if you don't know someone that's already in the industry. It's for me as a programmer specifically. I mean, you have to have for example, Wargaming was hiring here in Seattle recently, and they want you to have 10 plus years of programming experience with released AAA titles, and I'm just like, that. Who fits that mold? There can't possibly be that many people. I mean, that don't if you're working at Steam or something like at Valve, you're probably not gonna leave to go to Wargaming. You're probably pretty happy right where you are.
Yep, and actually, it's pretty much in all job offers. Like, for example, 3 to 5 year of experience, and you're like, okay, but I have to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, no, I got fairly lucky in that regard where I'm at right now. I'm getting a lot of game design experience just from, and that was total luck. And it sounds like you've been blessed with your situation as well, and to get all this new experience. It's probably really fun working there.
yeah, really, and yeah, you're really right about luck. Also, I think it's all about luck in the end.
Yeah,
Because I know other people that are super talented, but it takes them months to get employed because it's like I said, it's so hard to distinguish yourself in this huge industry. So yeah.
Well, it's awesome. I'm glad that you've been super successful so far because your game is rad.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the second one.
Well, I'm really looking forward into making it because I already have a lot of ideas. So I'm really eager to actually make it work.
So when you made that game, like, do you like kind of storyboard it beforehand? Is that how you go about it, or like in the process of creating all the levels and things, or?
Well, yeah. Well, if we talk really story-wise, like I said, it's more of a setting than a story, but I want more of a story in the sequel. But as for the level design, like I said, I did all the top view level design in the first 2 weeks. So I had all of the game planned out in paper in a week, if we could say.
It sounds
So,
like you might not have done that in a linear order, because you said the first level that you did was one of the hardest rooms from my perspective. So did you design all of the levels and then stitch them together in an order that made sense for the difficulty curve that you were trying to get?
No, actually, surprisingly, I did it in a linear way.
Okay.
But for the first level, like I said, I designed this was because I was prototyping the
Gotcha.
mechanics. So that was the first level that I actually made in the engine to see if it works.
Yeah, that
So,
did
yeah.
display all of your mechanics in that one room.
Exactly.
You were exercising everything that you were trying to leverage. So that was fun. Yeah.
Well, do you have any questions for us, Max?
Well, like I said, I'm always curious to see, well, what have you liked the most in the game, or what level did you like the most?
Like I said earlier, I liked the laser grid level because for me, that one with the time mechanic against you, where you're battling against those lasers, and it's a pretty tricky room because you do have to launch yourself across, several times back and forth across this room. I had a really fun time doing that because I understood what needed to happen, but just executing everything properly was the tricky part. And so I didn't get overly frustrated with it because I knew it was going to work. I knew I just needed to play better to make it happen.
Yep.
And I enjoyed that a lot. Like, for me, that was really fun. Also, those the 3 platforms that shoot out that make like stairs, that are kind of long. The first time I shot the bottom one, it shot across and knocked me off the thing into the lasers.
Well,
And I was
actually,
like, oh.
actually, when I designed the room, the platform on the bottom just goes halfway, so you don't get pushed. And then it was my mentor that actually suggested, well, wouldn't it be funny to actually push the player? And I was like, yeah, sure. But then, like, it's such a troll.
It is. Adam, when he
yeah.
did it, he did it, knocked himself back. Then he jumped on the next one, ran forward, got way too close, shot it, pushed himself back again, jumped up, ran forward, shot it, pushed himself back again. And I was like, you're on a time crunch here, man.
Well, that's the thing also with the game is that it's actually pretty interesting because usually in level design it's bad to do something in a level where you couldn't really know in advance that it would happen and then you die. But the thing is, with Red Trigger, you respond so fast that you're just like, okay, now I got it and I know what to do.
Yeah.
So
And you didn't
that was
punish
an
players
average.
with like a long death animation. It's kind of like Super Meat Boy in the sense that you die and you're more or less immediately starting over. There's really
Exactly.
not a lot of waiting. So there's that kind of like balancing act. Like, how much do I want to punish my players right now? But I mean, if you can get away with just killing them once and they're back in a second and then they learn, that's great.
I still want to get the achievement of beating that game without dying.
No, good luck.
That's the goal.
I think my favorite, beyond the puzzle that I talked about earlier, that with your perspective trick, I think that my favorite level was right after you kind of thought that you were done, you're moving forward, you close this door on the player, and you're like, well, shit, apparently there's something left to do in this room. So you turn around, and then you have to get on top and look down through this transparent glass to see these multitudes of mini puzzles that you need to solve to get out of there. And I thought that was a really interesting way of making the player explore this world that you'd created.
Yep, like I said, because the thing is, with Red Trigger, in the end, there's pretty much just one mechanic, and of course it depends on the game, but especially for little games, I think it's much more interesting when there's one mechanic that you use in so many ways and through the level design, instead of having a bunch of mechanics that you only use sometimes. So yeah, I really wanted to push that all the way, and it was kind of a thesis in the end to show that I really believe in that. So I put it in practice in Red Trigger.
Yeah, you kept drawing people back to like, this is what you have to do to get through here, which was nice. I mean, that honestly, like games that you are influenced by, like Portal, it's the exact same thing. You shoot two portals and then you
exactly
and then you use it in a different way by adding physics into it, which is, you know, very similar to the way that your triggers push people and propel them across rooms, which was super fun.
Definitely was. Well, I think that's all the questions we've got for you today, Max.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me, because it's really fun. And thank you for your interest, most of all.
No, and thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being there when we were on the podcast the first night we played it. And then thanks for letting us do the interview.
No problem. My pleasure.